Justin Stats, Reggie Johnson, Eugene Morton coming to you from the lovely city of Atlanta, Georgia. And, Eugene, this is interesting because, you got one of my favorite players here on screen. We're going to talk about the old guard and then we're going to talk about the new guard. So it's a two-part episode. We'll do a quick little segment here on the older players. And then we're going to talk about some of the newer players and who's going to be the next face of the league. But let's start here with the guys, LeBron, KD, and Steph. And this is one of the first finals in a long time that we haven't had one of these guys available here for us to watch, right? Which is kind of crazy. But here we are. So now that we are where we are here now, the question is who, if any, will win another title first? And we probably should do it this way. Let me break this up into two, because I can probably give examples for each. Because in this scenario, it's not hard to look at these teams and say none of these guys are going to win. I mean, if you're just keeping it, if we're going to just ruin our segment right off top here, Eugene, and just make this segment pointless, then it's probably none of these guys are probably going to win a champ. When you look at what's happening, look at as these rosters are presently constructed, it's hard to see any of these guys winning. So if you're a person that thinks that none of these guys are going to win again, then I kind of get that. And what are your thoughts on that specifically before we start talking about each individual player?
Yeah, I mean,
is that too cynical? Is it too cynical to think that they won't win again? At least, how about this? They won't win again as the main guy. Maybe they get older, join another guy, join one of these up and coming guys that we'll talk about later, and then maybe they're the piece there. But can they win another championship being the best player on their respective teams?
Steph would be probably my only choice because he's the only, but he needs help. Phoenix, I think we've all figured out in this playoffs, point guards matter. And LeBron, I mean, he was great, but we saw the plus minuses when he was when he was running the offense, and it wasn't the best when he was the offensive person, like the main person. So I'm going to go no, unless they have to reconstruct their teams. So you
don't think they would win? Any of them would win. So if we're going just off top on if we're just asking just that question, whether they would win or not another championship, are you leaning toward? Because me, I'm kind of like 30-70, 30% chance they win another one, 70% chance I don't think so.
I mean,
unless something happens there.
Yeah, so unless something happens, right? Because where they're presently construction, no. I mean, Lakers, yes, they played Denver great, but they still got swept, right? Last year they played them great again. They won one game. Phoenix, maybe we should give them a little more credit the way they played Minnesota. But again, point guards matter. And with Golden State, I mean, they've got to get better help for Steph. They just don't. They've got to get more pieces around him. So I think it's a great percentage. I can't argue with that. I would go 30-70. If
30-70 for you as well.
Yeah, I mean, unless they're gonna. I mean, obviously we know they're going to do something to change this, but I mean, change their.
But we're only talking as presently constructed, right? Because
presently constructed. Yeah, presently
constructed. What we don't know, and I do think, just like I'm pretty sure you do, that it's not impossible. We've seen stories stranger than that, right? So we've seen stories stranger than KD, LeBron, or Steph winning a championship. So it's wouldn't be pass out status if it was to occur. But I will say, with the way that these other teams are constructed, the way these other teams are coming, and these young players are playing, I feel like it's going to be difficult with what these teams gave up to get some of these players. I think that's part of the biggest issue. These teams gave up a lot to get the players that they have. And that's kind of what ends up happening, right? You kind of end up getting stuck with being a top-heavy team, I would say. It's hard to build out your team. You got to draft well, but a lot of times you're giving up your draft picks. You're trying to finesse those draft picks back, maybe make something happen to the trade deadline. And you can do that a lot of times to make your team better. We're seeing it happen with the Mavs, what the Mavs did to kind of get into the playoffs. But that being said, as presently constructed, I think it's going to be rough. So let's talk about who of the three then has the best chance. Now, you already kind of alluded to your pick being Steph. Why Steph of the three for you?
Well, they have the Klay Thompson conversation, right? They've got that. They've really got to decide what they're going to do. So at least if you don't bring them back, you can at least take that money and get some pieces around Steph, because they need as much as you can debate if you like Draymond or don't like him. He's a guy you need. He's one of those guys you need on your team. He's going to be there, bring that high energy to you. He's going to be the great facilitator. They need him on that team. Clay, again, we all know he's not going to be the same Clay. Now, could he go to another team and be, that's that spot up shooter in the corner? Yes, but does he?
You think they let Clay go? Is it time to let Clay go? I think it's going to be hard to do.
That's tough. That's a tough question, because it's one of those things. Okay, do you want to keep the core together and let them retire together, or do you want to win another championship? Now, if your goal is to keep the core together, you're not winning another championship. Full stop. Especially where the West is.
Really?
Well, I mean, look.
What if you just add some guys to that? What if you add some guys to that?
Like, what are you going to add? I
mean, finesse.
I don't know. I mean, what are you adding that just the West is going to get is, so you got, like, I know we're going to talk about it later, but those younger teams are going to get better. And if you're not going to get better, you're just going to add more role players. I don't know how you beat those top teams. So that would be my pick. And just Phoenix has no draft capital. They don't have a point guard. They had a point guard. They could have just kept. I mean, I don't see why they could have just kept Chris Paul around. I don't know what
he's over here in Golden State, man. Chilling over there right now, collecting his money.
Right, so,
over there.
Yeah, and the Lakers, again, they at least have some draft capital that they can. They have the D'Angelo Russell. I think he has a player option. He'll probably decline that. So they've got moves they can make. So I would definitely go Golden State, Lakers, Phoenix if I was going to just rank in order.
Okay, so I would make. Let me think. I think maybe I go Lakers. I mean, just for sake of arguing, but I don't know, man, because I could see the Warriors too, only because I think when you look at the Warriors, they got a nice young rookie that's been performing for them this past year. And they don't look like they're a mile away, when you look at a couple things maybe they can do here or there. I think the biggest question the Warriors are going to have is, what are you going to do with Clay? I think it's the biggest question that you're going to have, right? Because if you decide that you're going to move off of Clay, then you're saying you got a gap that you got to fill there from just like a cornerstone piece. And I'm talking about a great Clay when they were winning championships, not the Clay last year, because obviously filling that gap doesn't matter. You didn't make it to the playoffs with that version of Clay. You're going to have to fill the production that he had when you were actually winning championships. And that's not easy to do.
Right.
Because Clay, one of the best shooters of all time. There's not another best shooter of all time. You can just go grab off a team and just throw on this team, Maybe, and as much as they were talking about Brandon Ingram coming here, I think he would fit in with the Warriors. They had a Brandon Ingram type player, guy who can give them some length and knock down shots. I don't think that would be a bad thing for a Warriors team here that might be looking for those things.
Yeah, because they lack shooting, right?
Not to say that could happen, but what would you think about that in general? You think that's
I like that, but it's just
I
like the possibility, but the injury history. You and I are so aligned on the injury part of it. That's my only concern with him. I love him. He has had them, and sometimes he'll have the stinker games. But again, if you have that Clay, if you have the Curry backing you, you can kind of mask the times when he's not going to have those good games. But yeah, I mean, you saw this year when the teams were playing off Clay because they were not scared of him shooting. And if you don't have that other threat and you only have Steph, teams are going to we can play off Clay because we'd rather, live with that than give the ball to Steph.
Very true. Very true. And I kind of want to make the case for these other guys because I think there is maybe an avenue that you could see them winning. I'm with you on, if I had to rank them, maybe I go Steph, LeBron, KD, and then I'm gonna go over that a little bit in each order. So with Steph, we already talked about maybe a couple things here and there the Warriors need to get done. It hasn't been that long since they won a championship a few years ago. So it's not like they don't remember. The Phoenix would be the furthest in that case because Phoenix has never won one. But they were there, about 5 years
A
ago,
few years
4 or
ago.
5 years
Hmm.
ago, something like that, a few
Yep.
years ago.
Hmm.
So it's not impossible,
No.
but I do think that the Warriors are the closest because for one, they won one of the most recent, and it doesn't seem like they had to do a ton of things to that team. As long as Steph is out there doing what Steph does, they don't have to do a ton of things. But I do think trying to replace peak Clay is just going to be difficult. It's going to be
Right.
difficult for them to do. I don't know if there's any guy that's out there for them. So let's talk about our guy here, Katie. Now the Suns. We'll go from bottom up here. We're gonna go from
Hmm.
all the way back because we just talked about the Warriors. I guess. We'll do it this way because we could just go
Okay.
backwards and talk about with LeBron, but let's go ahead and talk about the bookends here. The best and who we feel the worst will be. And I think the feeling the Suns will be the worst is easy because for me personally, this team has been a very top heavy team for a couple of years and they've paid the price for that. You got a couple guys that are great, then you got everybody else. And you need to have pretty good efforts out of these guys. Bradley Beal appears right now to be a shell of himself. People are very happy when he was signed to the team, and maybe he would have been that answer. But I always view Bradley Beal also as more of a 2 guard than a 1. And him
Yes.
and Devin Booker seem to have similar skill sets, in my opinion. Even though Booker's a bigger guy, more dependable, younger for sure. But more similar to each other than a pure point guard to either one of them. You know what I mean? Neither one,
Right.
both of them kind of come across to me as scorers, him and Booker, and even Durant, right? When you really think of Durant, they're all kind of the same guy. They're all scorers. All the guys are guys.
Right, but at least you get good
basket.
defense. Good defense out of KD. You get good defense out of Booker, but Beal is like you said. It's another case. It's like
I think he's owed big money too, man. By the way,
big money, no trade clause, so you're kind of stuck with a contract. And it was very similar, eerie to how they had the big three, like the Brooklyn scenario where they weren't on the court a lot with each other. A lot of them were. KD was out, Booker was out, Beal was out a lot this year. So you got to kind of put that in there as well. Got to be worried about that. And then you have no draft. You have zero draft capital because you brought both these guys in. You brought KD in.
That's the problem. That you got to just mortgage your future, and you really have to hope that things as presently constructed are going to work out when you make when you kind of load your team up with veterans, excellent veterans. Don't get me wrong, and Booker's still a great player. You can get a boatload. I wouldn't trade Booker if I was the Suns. You can get a boatload for him if you traded him, but I wouldn't do that.
No.
Not with my other players aging, and no, he's going to be my cornerstone guy for the next few years here. So, distant third to win another championship? Is it that? Are they that far away from the Warriors?
It's just, I like you said, I guess you could do in the offseason. Well, first they got to address the point guard. Again, hate to say it, nauseum, but point guards matter. We discovered this again in the playoffs, right? We figured out that it matters. So I don't know. And then you paint all three of those guys. So you're already in that first apron of just killing your is the new owner. Is he gonna? I mean, he probably is gonna will. He doesn't care about paying the extra tax money. So, I mean, 1 through 5, fantastic. They're one of those great regular season teams. They're gonna be there.
I hear maybe Budenholzer gets in there and shakes some things up. I don't know.
I mean, Coach Bud, let's face it, he knew what to do. I mean, I always knocked him for night guys, not his team's never getting offensive rebounds, but he knew what his team was. Older team, we're not gonna if somebody shoots, everyone runs back. And so maybe he's gonna kind of bring that mentality. It's like, you got a veteran team, we're gonna cut down on those fast break opportunities. If you shoot the ball, everyone runs back. Nobody blocks us out. Nobody goes for the offensive rebounds. Everyone, gets back. So it'll be interesting.
No.
Yeah, Coach Bud. But again, I don't think Frank did a bad job. Frank Viola said
I think he did what he had to.
Right.
Like, sometimes these owners wanted you to pull a rabbit out of the hat. I felt the same thing about Darvin Ham. We'll talk about the Lakers in a second here. But I felt the same thing about Darvin Ham. I felt like you want these guys to pull a rabbit out of the hat with some of these teams. Your team is just
Right.
not that good. It's just
No.
not a good team. So I don't understand what the expectation is a lot of times here, to be honest with you. I'm not sure what the owner expects. I'm not sure why he expects it. What kind of miracle are you expecting with these teams? You don't have the depth to match up. These young kids are making you look 1,000 out there when they're running up and down the
Right.
court. And unless you can do something to kind of infuse your team with that same kind of energy, the young, and look at OKC, man. OKC bringing that young energy out here, right? As a young team out here, one game away from the Western Conference Finals?
Right.
They're not going anywhere, right?
No. They're going to
If
be
Denver
just as
gets
good.
somebody to score 10 points from their role players, and they're back in the Western Conference Finals. They just can't get nothing. They couldn't get anything out of their guys. But they were 10 points away from being back in the Western Conference Finals again. They're not going anywhere.
Exactly.
So it just
Those
seems
teams are going to
like
get better.
These teams seem distant. I guess that's why we gave them the 30%, right? Because they just seem so distant from the other teams as far as getting there. Maybe I think the Suns are going to need a miracle because of what they don't have kind of to negotiate with, right? You're always going to be forced. It'll be interesting to see because we said the same thing about the Lakers a couple years ago. And I think Pelinka made some great moves at the trade deadline. Was able to kind of get them some help and get some things done and make them look a little bit better down the stretch. So maybe you have something like that happen. But I don't see it right now.
Yeah,
as
what pieces are going to move?
We need some more players, you know?
Yeah.
So let's talk about the Lakers here. Let's talk about our guy, LBJ. Will he be winning another chip? And what does it take? I think he's closer than they're closer than the Suns are, in my opinion, man.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely closer than the Suns are to winning another chip. It's just I feel like all these teams have similar situations. And that situation is the top heaviness, right? Once you get past your veterans, who else do you have? I mean, LeBron gave him what, 26, 27, 8 and 7, get close to his career averages, and he still looks like he can go out there and give you another. What is he? If he falls off next year, what does he give you? 25, 7 and 6?
Oh, darn.
So it's not going to be his fault. I mean, LeBron is doing, if anything, any knock on this team, I don't necessarily have a knock for LeBron or AD because they did also play over 70 games, which is amazing. The knock I would have is the Darvin Ham firing because I just don't understand it. I don't understand what Darvin Ham. Now, from what you hear, if what you hear is to be believed, it's that AD and a lot of these other guys just weren't buying into Darvin Ham anymore, and that kind of got him out of here. But I think that at the same time, Phil Jackson couldn't come back and coach this team. Red Auerbach couldn't come back and coach this team to success as presently constructed. And you got to keep the great thing about sports is keying in on that last thing that I just said, as presently constructed. A couple of roster moves to change your life. You know, you can make a couple of roster moves and come back with a much better team and a team that's just defying expectations and which you felt they would be. So there are moves out there to be made. I think that what has us so down on Phoenix was the lack of ability to make the moves that you're going to need to make you better.
And they're the opposite.
Yeah, the Lakers have some moves that can be made. I just don't know what they are because I feel like in order for you to get another superstar here, you're going to have to give up a lot of your depth to get another superstar in here. I like the kid Reeves Hachimura. Kind of showed a little bit for them last year. Russell, I've never been a huge D'Angelo Russell fan, so
yeah,
I can't really be objective about the guy. I'm just not a huge fan of D'Angelo Russell, to be honest with you. So I don't know if people would trade for him, what the trade bait may be for him, what the trade market may be for him. Maybe you know better than I do, but I don't really know what it would be for D'Angelo Russell at this moment. And I definitely don't want him. You know what I mean? I don't want him here in the A. So I'm not sure exactly what his situation is. Maybe they try to go after another point guard. I'm trying to think who it would be. And we'll probably go through a lot of trade scenarios after the playoffs and all that stuff is done. Because I'm pretty sure they're going to be rampant throughout the summer. But it's just a situation where sometimes, and we had this with Lillard last year, you already know the guy that's available, right? And you already know teams are going to try to go after this guy and he's available. This year, it's a little different. There's not really a guy I can just think of right off the head of, at least of a Damian Lillard type of caliber that's just sitting out there and ready to be traded. even as much as Trey has been mentioned, I haven't heard anything conclusively that Trey is going to be traded. You know what I mean? So, what do you think that the Lakers have to do to even have a shot at winning another chip?
Well, the first thing you said was like they have their the thing with Russell, he's got a player option. So I mean, he had a great season, so he's probably going to decline his player option and be a free agent, which would make the most sense. We don't see a lot of players, other than James Harden, who thought he was going to get his big contract. Like he got screwed over by the 76ers.
So is Russell he's in his last year?
Yeah. So he can opt out of this contract and be a free agent, which makes more sense. The only piece really you think they could really get anything from is Reeves, right? That's kind of only your piece because you're not going to trade LeBron. You're not going to trade Davis. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. The one player you can kind of get some return from, is Reeves, and then is Spider gonna, is Cleveland gonna get, Donovan Mitchell? Are they gonna trade him to Lakers? Everything I keep reading, they do not want to deal with Lakers.
No, from what I hear,
I
hear that's the one team they don't want to trade him to.
That's the one team they don't want to trade with, because we know the owner. Owner is not a big fan of LeBron, and LeBron's not a big fan of the owner. But so that's one piece you can kind of play. I mean, and also if you're a team with just thinking outside the box, why not? This draft is so horrible, and if you're one of those top teams in the bottom, why not draft Bronny James and see if you can lure him out of the Lakers, right? If you're Dallas.
I don't see it happening, man. Gosh, I just don't see it happening. I don't see LeBron leaving to go.
That's
and
I
think that
either.
him and they both have kind of given statements. Like LeBron's kind of said, all right, like to pump the brakes on that a little bit. Like he's not just going to jump to any team that Bronny's on. And Bronny has come out himself and said he's trying to make his own legacy. Like it's not like priority number one to play with his dad. They're both saying the right things in that way. Like they would love it to happen, and I'm pretty sure they would. But barring Bronny just not getting drafted and Lakers being able to just go pick him up, I don't see LeBron just going to any team. Not to say that he won't go to play with his son, but I don't think it would be like if Bronny goes to Utah, I don't see LeBron following him out to Utah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like I'm just going to put it out there. You know what I mean? I just don't see LeBron going anywhere. So maybe teams that are already competitive, that are maybe one player away, and then you bring on Bronny, and maybe if you're like the Pelicans or something, and you feel like you already got a bunch of guys, you bring on Bronny. But even then, LeBron's not a free agent, right? He can't just go there. They would have to be traded there, wouldn't he?
No, he's.
Are they re-upped him?
No, they haven't re-upped him yet. I think he's in that. I feel like he's in the same situation. So, but there's been no. It's not like the last couple of times when we knew he was leaving Cleveland the first time, right? We kind of knew he was leaving, even though the big decision, right? We knew when he's leaving Miami. We kind of knew he was leaving Cleveland again, second time for Cleveland, but at least he won the championship, right? We have no indication. There's been no breadcrumbs of him saying that we've been thinking about him leaving the Lakers. And he has so much established there right now. I don't see it. I'm just saying if I'm a team in that lower tier to be drafting, would I take a shot in drafting Bronny to see if I can lure LeBron out of LA? That would be my only thing. But again, at least like I said, they have the Reeves, they have some draft picks. And again, with our Darvin Ham, the only thing I can say about Darvin is like last year, I felt like in the playoffs, he had that Jedi mind trick of like figuring out guys when he had like just his rotations were much better, right? He felt like he could get guys in and out, and when the guy was hot, he would get the guy out before the guy would get cold. This year, he kind of had issues with rotations, but even if those rotations were even better, so I go to 6 and I'm playing, whoever the 3rd seed was, or I mean the 4th seed at the time, or sorry, the 5th. I don't think it mattered. It could have been they could have been a better team. They still weren't going to come out the West. They still weren't going to be those top teams, in my opinion.
Okay. Well, leave it there because we'll have more time to kind of discuss this throughout the offseason. Just the stats. Check us out. Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you find your podcast, as well as TikTok, YouTube, and wherever you stream. See you next time.